Oh. Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a second. We're just pulling up our slides. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, students and parents and caregivers, educators, everyone for joining us tonight on the Delaware Student Success webinar about how to pay for college. We're going to talk about financial aid and scholarships, but first I want to just give you a few housekeeping tips. This session's being recorded, and so you can, if you want to watch it again, or if you want to recommend it to a friend or a colleague, everything, it will be posted on the DelawareStudentSuccess.org website in a couple of days. All of our sessions are being recorded and will be there. No attendees tonight will be on video, and all of you are on mute. So please feel free to ask questions. Just put them in the chat and we will pause a couple of times during the presentation and then have plenty of time at the end to answer your questions. So please use the chat for your questions. If you could, Kelly, go to the next slide. On the call with me tonight are, my name is Karen Keegan from the Delaware Department of Education. And on the call with me tonight are my colleagues from the University of Delaware Institute for Public Administration. They help us run Delaware Student Success and College Application Month. And so they are helping to run this webinar tonight. I want to call your attention to the 17 webinars that we have on many different topics to help students and families think about plans for after high school graduation. We've had several already, and as I mentioned before, they are all recorded and all posted available for you to watch if you're interested in these topics, such as how do you pick a career area, or a basic college admissions webinar, just what are college application representatives looking for in a college application. We've had Delaware Tech and the University of Delaware, as well as Delaware State University, present on programs and opportunities at their institutions. We had a session on how to write your college essay. Tonight is financial aid and scholarships. Tomorrow is a presentation by Goldie Beacom, and then Thursday is Wesley College. Next week, we have Delaware College of Art and Design and Wilmington University. And then after that, coming up, we have some sessions. If you're interested in the military, we're having many different branches present career and educational opportunities. If you're the first in your family to attend college, we have some information and tips for you and your family. In terms of jobs, we have a session on resumes, interviews, cover letters, how to make yourself stand out to get that opportunity, whether it's a job. And we have a session on apprenticeships and industry certification. So what kind of job can you get with an industry certification and what's involved in an apprenticeship? So all of this information is on the DelawareStudentSuccess.org website. You need to register for any of these, just like you did for tonight, and you'll be sent the link to join. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is our new texting program. This is for high school students and parents or caregivers. If you want to join, you can text the word success to 302-492-2092, and we will send you a couple of different pieces of information, about 2 texts a week or so. Next steps on things you can consider doing towards preparing for career and college. Reminders about the webinars that are coming up, and you can text us back with questions and we will answer you directly. And the people who will be answering those questions would be me and my colleagues who are on this call tonight from the Institute for Public Administration at the University of Delaware. So please feel free to sign up if you're interested, and we would love to connect with you and just help you with your planning for life after high school. And so at this time, I am going to turn the presentation over to my colleague from the Higher Education Office, Juliet Murawski, who is our financial aid and scholarship administrator, and she's going to share some really important information about how to pay for college. So Julie, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it very much. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate you all taking the time this evening to stop by this webinar. So we're going to go over some things that will be helpful to you as you think about college, how to pay for college, what's involved in that, how to find financial aid and scholarships. So hopefully this will be informative information. As Karen said, I will break for questions throughout. Certainly feel free to put it in the chat. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to clarify anything. This presentation will be, it's recorded, but it'll also be available for download. So if there's any information in here that you want to jot down, just feel free to do that or to wait to get the actual presentation itself. Okay, so when you're choosing a college, there's a lot of things to think about. So when you're deciding, do you want to stay in state? Do you want to go out of state? Is your preference to have a large school or a small school? Certainly a big part of your decision and where to go to college is what price will you pay and how are you going to pay for that education? It's important to know up front, am I going to be eligible for scholarships or grants at this school? And also to know what are my potential earnings in a specific career field versus the cost to attain this degree? Like how expensive is this degree going to be to me? And what are my earning potentials for that career for the rest of my life? These are really important questions to think about when you are starting the process of choosing a college or when you're trying to narrow down which school you're going to go to. There are a lot of different resources available to help pay for college. So certainly there are scholarships. Now scholarships are free money. They're not funds that need to be repaid. You can get scholarships from lots of different places, but the main places would be the state of Delaware, certainly, private scholarships, and then scholarships from the college that you're attending. In addition to scholarships, there's also grants. Grants are also free money. Generally, the grants will come from the federal government. They'll come through the FAFSA, and those, but scholarships and grants do not need to be repaid. A large part for some students in funding their education is loans. Okay, so it's not necessarily a bad thing to get loans, but what you really want to do is maximize the amount of free money you can get to supplement loans that you might potentially have to take. You generally would get loans from the federal government or from private resources. So we're going to touch a little bit on all three of those and where you get those types of aid. So I'm sure everybody has heard of the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is the most important document that you can complete online to get financial aid. This is your application for federal grants as well as student and parent loans. Okay, so the FAFSA is what's going to help you to get the most amount of financial aid. Colleges generally will review your FAFSA and they'll determine if you're eligible for any of the need-based aid from their school. And then they'll also use that FAFSA to determine if you're eligible for any scholarships that are need-based from the school. So colleges are looking at your FAFSA in order to offer you federal aid as well as institutional aid. The FAFSA is also looked at in almost every state when states are looking for need-based aid. So certainly in the state of Delaware, we look at FAFSA for Delaware residents when we're determining who may be eligible for need-based aid. We do find as well that a lot of private scholarships are looking at the FAFSA. If there's any component in a scholarship that says financial need required, then really what they mean is they're going to be reviewing your FAFSA. They might ask you to send them FAFSA for private scholarships. There's no income cutoff to qualify for federal student aid. Sometimes people will say, I make too much money to file the FAFSA. Potentially, the income in the family might be too much for free money, but if you're interested in the federal student loans and potentially even work study, that all comes through the FAFSA. So when you're completing the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, it's completed online. So it's been online now for a number of years, and there's a lot of benefits for doing it online. Begins every October. So October 1, the FAFSA opens. October 1, a couple of weeks ago, the FAFSA just opened. So if you're planning on attending college for fall 21 and spring 2022, you're going to be filling out the FAFSA using 2019 taxes. So those are taxes that have already been completed. What is really nice about the FAFSA online is that you can directly link the FAFSA to the IRS to pull over your both student and parent income if both have filed taxes. When you're looking at a dependent student, and that is the majority of students who are under the age of 24, who are working on an undergraduate degree, unless there are some unique situations there, for the most part, students will be dependent. So the FAFSA will include both the student and the parent information. There'll be a section asking just for student data. Then there'll be another section asking for parent data. When you're doing it online, there's a guide to help you through that application process. There's a lot of built-in skip logic. So if you answer no to a question, it will skip questions that don't pertain to your family. So the Delaware Higher Education Office works with an organization called Stand By Me for their college funding project. They offer a lot of different resources to help you complete your FAFSA. I have their information available in this presentation too, and certainly you can reach out to them. They have webinars, they have one-on-one FAFSA appointments that they have available this year. So when you're completing a FAFSA, if you're a dependent student, as I mentioned, both the parent and the student will have their information on the FAFSA. Both parent and student will apply for what's called an FSA ID number. Basically, this is an electronic signature. This is how you file your FAFSA. When you apply for the FSA ID number as a student, that is your number for the rest of your academic career. You keep that number and you use it every year that you file a FAFSA. The same for the parent. You will apply for an FSA ID in a parent name. You will use that ID number to sign the FAFSA for your student for as long as they're in college. You do complete a FAFSA every year. It's not for the first time that you're going to college, you do a FAFSA and it lasts all 4 years. You'll complete the FAFSA every year that your student is enrolled in college. Certainly the family situation could change. There could be more students in college. There could be more or less income. So every year the FAFSA is going to be based on the most recent family situation. The best possible advice I can give you for filling out your FAFSA is to do it as early as possible. Many colleges have priority funding deadlines. States have priority funding deadlines. When you file your FAFSA, when you complete it and submit it, you're going to get something back called the Student Aid Report from the federal processor. This is basically a synopsis of everything that you put in your FAFSA. It's really important for you to review the Student Aid Report to make sure that nothing is wrong. So for example, if you're filling out the FAFSA online and you get a little bit confused, you might potentially have accidentally put the parent income in the student section, or maybe you put an extra zero in somebody's income. If you review the Student Aid Report and there's any issues, you can go back online to your FAFSA and fix it. So that Student Aid Report is really important to make sure you take a look at it. Generally, you get the Student Aid Report about 2 to 3 days after it's been submitted electronically and processed. When you're filing the FAFSA, it's one application that you complete, and you can send it to up to 10 schools at a time. So if there are a number of schools that you're interested in, you can add those schools to your FAFSA and submit it. Now, if you have not applied to a school yet, but you know you're going to, it's perfectly okay to add them to your FAFSA. Schools generally will not access your FAFSA until you've been admitted to that school. So if you're filling out the FAFSA before you've sent in all of your applications, I wouldn't wait to add a school. I'd go ahead and put all of the schools that you're interested in on your FAFSA and submit it. If you are applying to more than 10 schools, you can put 10 schools on your FAFSA, make sure it's processed, and then 2 or 3 days later, you can go back into your FAFSA, take off a school and add one. So you can theoretically add as many schools as you want to your FAFSA. You can just do up to 10 at a time. So for every school that you're admitted to, you're going to receive a financial aid award package. And in that package, it's going to let you know what you've been offered in terms of financial aid to go to that school. So one thing to bear in mind is if your financial circumstances have changed since your taxes were filed, then you're going to reach out to the school where you're planning on going to college and ask for what they call a special circumstance review of your FAFSA. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're going to college for 21-22, you're filing your FAFSA with your 2019 income taxes. A lot has changed for many of us between 2019 and today. So if your income has changed, if there's an unemployment situation in the family, you can't change the FAFSA yourself, but your college can. So that's why you want to reach out to the financial aid office and let them know, hey, you have a change in situation. You want to talk to them about how you will change the FAFSA. They are very used to working with families on this. So certainly they would encourage you to reach out to them. So when you're reviewing the financial aid awards that you get from each college, there's a couple of things that you really need to look at. The financial aid offer that they're giving you, is it going to cover all of the costs? So there are direct and indirect costs to going to college, and I'll mention those a little bit more and what they entail. It's also important to know if you're offered a scholarship by the college, are they renewable? Is this something you're going to get for 1 year or for all 4 years? That makes a really big difference. If you know that you're guaranteed a $1,000 scholarship every year for 4 years, as opposed to just for the first year, helps you to plan through all 4 years of your college and not just the first year that you're going to school. Another thing to note when you're looking at scholarships is ask if it's tied to a specific major. So if the scholarship is tied to an engineering major, for example, if that's what you declared, you would want to know, if I change my major, do I lose eligibility for the scholarships? So it's important to kind of really look at the scholarships and see what they entail. When you're looking at financial aid packages from multiple schools, you really want to be looking at the bottom line. How much are you going to be paying out of pocket after the free money, basically, after grants and scholarships? And when you're talking about applying to schools, if you've applied to multiple schools and been admitted, you're going to receive multiple financial aid award offers. So it's important to review them. They're not always apples to apples. So you're going to be reviewing them, each one looking at the bottom line. What is it going to cost your family for you to attend each school? So when I mentioned those direct and indirect charges, really what you're looking at are your direct charges. That's what you're going to be charged from the school. You're going to get a bill for your tuition. You're going to get a bill for fees. If you're living on campus, you're going to get charged for housing and for meals. So tuition fees, room and board is typically what you're going to see on your bill every semester from your college. So in addition to those charges, they're not going to show up on your bill, but you're going to need money for books and supplies. So you don't have to buy your books at the bookstore. You don't even have to buy a book anymore. You can buy the electronic version of it if it's offered. You might need a laptop computer for supplies. Transportation's really looking at if you need to get to and from college, if you're commuting, or if you're going home on weekends. And personal expenses is just that, basically spending money. So when a college comes up with a total cost of what it's going to cost you to be there for a year, they're not only looking at your tuition, fees, room and board, but they're also looking at these other expenses, your books and your supplies. So that total amount together is going to give you an accurate picture of what it's going to cost you to go to that school for 1 year. When you complete a FAFSA, you're going to be offered student loans and most likely parent loans. So the Parent Plus loan and the Student Stafford loan come from the FAFSA. When a college is offering you financial aid, they're going to offer you up to the full cost of attendance. So they're going to offer you enough money, even if it's just all in loans sometimes, and we hope it's a combination of scholarships, grants, and loans, but they're going to offer you up to the full cost of attendance, including the money that you might need for books and supplies. So if your direct or indirect expenses are not as high as the amount that the school is estimating, you do not have to take loans. You do not have to take all of the loans. You can choose to take a portion of the loan, and the award letter should tell you how to accept part of it. Generally, if you've got a financial aid award letter that has grants and scholarships, you're going to want to accept them and then think about the loans. So for example, if you have a part-time job or a summer job and you've saved up money throughout the summer for books, then you really don't want to borrow to cover your books if you have those expenses covered out of pocket. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to talk to a financial aid officer at the college where you're planning on going about anything really. So if you're not sure about something on the financial aid award, if you're not sure if it is a grant or scholarship, if you're not sure about the requirements for those pieces of aid, reach out to a financial aid officer, call, make an appointment. Most likely the best way to get people certainly right now is to speak with them over the phone. but I would certainly suggest that you do that if you have any questions about the financial aid that you've been offered. And that goes for multiple schools. If you're considering multiple schools, you really want to know everything and every component about that financial aid award at each school before you make your decision. So one website that's really helpful in trying to determine what is the cost, what's it really going to cost your family or a student to attend an institution, is the Net Price Calculator. So this is a tool that you can use. Generally, it's available on a college's website, usually under the financial aid office portion of their website. And this will allow you to figure out the difference between the full cost, or basically the sticker cost, the price of the institution, minus any grants or scholarships that you might be eligible for. So what you do in this net price calculator is you'll enter in some basic family information into the net price calculator, and then the school will already have determined, based on the information that you've given them, what type of aid you may potentially be eligible for. Kind of a precursor to the FAFSA. So even before you file the FAFSA, if you are not a senior yet, and you want to have an idea of what you might be eligible for at a particular school, this is a good way to get that information now. Not every school participates in the net price calculator, but it will say on a school's website if they do. Again, generally that is under the financial aid section of a school's website. So how can the net price calculator help? Well, what it will do is help you to widen your choices of college beyond those that you might have felt were not affordable. So it's very possible that a school with a higher cost could really be more affordable to your family than a school with potentially a lower tuition cost. And the reason for that is, excuse me, very often schools with the highest tuition costs have more revenue to then offer financial aid and scholarships. Okay, so basically the higher the cost to go to school, the more opportunity there might be for scholarships for you to go there, versus a college that, their tuition might be lower, but because of that, they don't have as much dollars to offer students in terms of scholarships. So students might find by going through the net price calculator that colleges are much more affordable than they felt they were. And it's just a good tool for families to just get a sense of which schools they want to keep in their list. Now, at this point, I just want to take a very quick break and see if anybody have any questions about anything I've mentioned up to this point. I don't know if there's anybody has put any questions in the chat.
We didn't get any questions in the chat yet.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay. So what I want to talk about are resources for finding scholarships. So the Delaware Scholarship Compendium is produced by the Delaware Higher Education Office. It is available on our website, delawarestudentsuccess.org. So this Delaware Scholarship Compendium, a printed copy is available this year, was produced for every high school senior and mailed to their home. This online version and the paper version lists hundreds of local, private, national scholarships. It's a really good resource for scholarship research. Online, you can search by application deadline for scholarships. You can search for scholarships by the high school that you go to, the county that you live in, by academic merit. So it's a really good resource for scholarships. This is available on our website and is updated every year. So in addition to private, local, national scholarships, certainly there are state scholarships on the Delaware Scholarship Compendium. So for the upcoming year, for 21-22 academic year, the state of Delaware also has a FAFSA completion deadline. So I mentioned that schools have priority funding deadlines in that they want you to complete your FAFSA by a certain date so that they can look at your application. This same for the state of Delaware. For the majority of the state of Delaware scholarships, that deadline is April 15th, 2021 or earlier. There are some scholarships that require you to file the FAFSA before the application deadline. So as I mentioned earlier, the best thing you can possibly do is file the FAFSA as earlier as possible. So for students who are applying for state of Delaware scholarships, they would first create an account with the Delaware Higher Education Office. And again, you can do that through delawarestudentsuccess.org, going to state aid. So there's many different types of scholarships through the state of Delaware, There are merit, which are based on academics, and need-based programs, which are based on the FAFSA. There's also a number of loan incentive programs through the state where students can apply for loans, which can be forgiven for qualifying employment within the state of Delaware. So I wanted to mention these merit scholarships. There are 3 scholarships that we refer to as the Memorial Scholarships. They're the B. Bradford Barnes, the Charles Hebner, and the Herman Holloway Scholarship. These are basically full ride scholarships. So for the Bradford Barnes, there's 1 awarded to a Delaware resident each year. For the Hebner scholarships, 2 are awarded. And for the Herman Holloway, 1 is awarded each year. So these are for students going to either the University of Delaware or Delaware State University, and they cover full tuition fees, room, board, and books for 1 year. In addition to those scholarships, there's another merit-based scholarship that's called the Diamond State Scholarship. That award amount is $1,250 per year. There's approximately 40 of those awarded each year. They are based on academics purely. And for all 4 of these merit scholarships, they are renewable for 4 years. These are for Delaware high school students to apply to in their senior year. For all 4 of these scholarships, the application opens December 1st and closes this year, February 26th. So this is a snapshot of the criteria for those merit scholarships. There's an SAT and a GPA component, and then you can see which ones are specifically for schools. So for example, the Bradford Barnes would be for somebody going to the University of Delaware. Those, the Barnes, the Hebner, the Holloway are not portable outside the state. They are for specific schools. The Diamond State Scholarship can go to any college in the United States. It is not restricted to Delaware. It can go to anywhere in the United States. These 4 awards are for undergraduate students. And again, these are for students, high school students in their senior year would apply for these. They are renewable for 4 years. So the need-based scholarship, the one that's based on financial need, is the Scholarship Incentive Program, the SKIP Scholarship. This is the largest award that we give out in terms of number of students. So there's approximately 900 students awarded this each year. The award amount is $1,000. All of the scholarships are a yearly amount, so it's generally half for fall, half for spring. So for this particular award, it would be $500 for fall and $500 for spring. This award is not renewable, but students can apply for it every year. There's a minimum GPA of a 2.5 for this. It's based on financial need. So again, we're looking at your FAFSA. For this award, students will need to have filed their FAFSA before April 15th. This can be used for full-time students at any college in Delaware. There are situations where this can be portable outside of Delaware. If the student is enrolled outside of Delaware in a program or a major that's not available in Delaware. So if a student is applying for SKIP, they're going out of state, we're looking at the major. Is it a program that we do not have in Delaware? If we don't have it in our Delaware public institutions, which is the University of Delaware or Delaware State University, then the student is allowed to keep it out of state if they meet all the other requirements for the SKIP scholarship. So that is the main need-based scholarship through the state of Delaware. So as I mentioned earlier too, there's a number of loan forgiveness programs. These are programs where students in specific career fields can apply for these loans. They get the money while they're in college. And then when they graduate from college, if they work in an eligible field in the state of Delaware, then they can have their loan forgiven. So for example, the Christa McAuliffe Teaching Incentive Program. If a student applies for that and receives it, if they're in an, a teaching major in Delaware, they can receive $5,000 per year while they're in school. And then when they graduate, if they're working in Delaware as a teacher, then they can have their loans forgiven. Every year that they have the loan can be forgiven for every year of work. So this is a really good program for students who know the career field that they're going to go into, and they know they're going to stay in Delaware. So the specific career fields would be teaching, nursing, optometry, speech language pathology, and the Ada Lee Souls program is for librarians and archivists. So again, these are programs that have loans that are forgiven if a student works in an eligible field in Delaware. Now, the SEED scholarship is for students who graduate from a Delaware high school and they're planning to go full-time in the associate degree program at Delaware Technical Community College or the University of Delaware's Associates in Arts program. Students who are availing of the seed must have a GPA of at least 2.5 and enroll no later than the fall semester after high school. So if you graduate in May, you would be starting at either Del Tech Community College or the University of Delaware Associate of Arts program that fall. You take a semester off and decide to go for the spring semester, you would not be eligible for the SEED program. You would have to enroll directly after graduation from high school. There's no application for SEED, although you do have to file a FAFSA every year. You must meet all the general admission standards for the institution. The award can be used for 6 semesters, and it can cover the cost of tuition. So that's the SEED scholarship, basically for students who are graduate from a Delaware high school with at least a 2.5, have no felony convictions, and they're admitted to Delaware Technical Community College or the University of Delaware's Associate of Arts program starting the fall after graduation. So similar to the SEED scholarship, there's the Inspire scholarship. This provides at least $3,900 per year for eligible Delaware high school students who are going to go to full-time at the Delaware State University. So for this program, there's also a requirement of a 2.75 GPA. You must, of course, be admitted and meet all of the admission standards for the school. Just like the SEED scholarship, you must enroll in the fall semester directly after graduating high school. So again, taking a semester off before you go to the institution would lose eligibility for this scholarship. There's no application for the Inspire scholarship. You would, of course, also need to complete a FAFSA every year. The award can be used for 4 years. And for the Inspire scholarship, there's an added component of a requirement for 10 hours of community service every semester that you're a recipient of the Inspire scholarship. So another program that is available in the state of Delaware, which is a really interesting program, is called the Academic Common Market. So Delaware is one of 15 states that are in this compact agreement between states that if there's a degree program that's not offered in a public institution in Delaware, and again, our public institutions offering a bachelor's and above would be the University of Delaware, Delaware State University. So if there's a major that's not available in those schools, you could potentially go out of state into one of the schools that participate in the Academic Common Market and pay their in-state tuition. So for example, if you wanted to study architecture at the University of Kentucky, Knoxville, that's a major that we do not have in Delaware, and the University of Kentucky participates in the Academic Common Market. So if you are going to that school, you could pay their in-state tuition. Generally, the difference between in and out of state tuition sometimes is double. So it's a huge cost savings to Delaware residents if they're planning to go out of state and they're going into a school that participates in the Academic Common Market. So again, if you want to look at all of the programs, and there's over 400 programs available to Delaware residents in the Academic Common Market, you would go to delawarestudentsuccess.org and click on ACM, Academic Common Market. So here's a list of all of the states that participate in the Academic Common Market. Not every school in each state will participate in the Academic Common Market. Schools choose whether they want to be in the ACM or not. Some states participate only at the graduate level. For example, Florida only has graduate programs in the Academic Common Market, but there are many other schools throughout these states that participate in the Academic Common Market. So again, it's a really good resource if you're planning on going out of state and you want to have that tuition savings of having in-state tuition at an out-of-state school. Okay, so I want to touch for a little bit now on how to maximize your chances of receiving scholarship. Before I go there, is there any other questions? Is there anything I can elaborate that we've touched on so far?
Yeah, so we got 2 questions in the chat. We have one that says, if I'm living in Maryland but go to school in Delaware, where should they apply to scholarships in either Maryland or Delaware?
So if the student is a Maryland resident, then they're going to be applying for state of Maryland scholarships. The only exception to that would be the SEED program. If you are a Maryland resident, but you're attending a Delaware high school, then you would still be eligible for the SEED program at the University of Delaware Associate of Arts or at Delaware Technical Community College. So if you're a Maryland resident, general scholarships, certainly looking through the state of Maryland. But for a Maryland resident going to a Delaware school, there is that just unique program at SEED that you would be eligible for the SEED program.
Awesome. And then we have another question from Leandra who asks, do we have to do the FAFSA every year, even after we get the Inspire scholarship?
Yes, very good question. You do need to file the FAFSA every year. It's required for the Inspire scholarship, so they do need you to file the FAFSA. So in addition to Inspire scholarship, you could potentially be eligible for other aid through your FAFSA, which if you're eligible for federal grants or student loans, you would need to have the FAFSA filed. So yes, specifically for Inspire, you do need to file your FAFSA every year. But then for all scholarship purposes, you would also need to file your FAFSA every year that you're in college to maximize your chances of getting financial aid.
Awesome, great.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so one of the best tips I can give you about searching for scholarships is to do it as early as possible. Don't wait until January of your senior year to start looking for scholarships. That's going to be a really busy time. You're going to have a lot on your plate. Don't have this extra added burden of thinking like, now I need to start the process. Start early. Certainly the summer before your senior year is a really good time to start looking at scholarships. Even before that, you can go online tonight and look at the Delaware Scholarship Compendium and see what scholarships are available. It may be too early for you to apply because maybe you're a sophomore or a junior, but generally we find that scholarship application deadlines are about the same every year. So if the scholarship says it opens December 1st and it closes in February, that's pretty much going to be the same going forward. So at least you have it in the back of your mind, okay, these are scholarships I need to look at. These are ones I'm eligible for. It's really important to pay attention to scholarship deadlines. Scholarship deadlines are really firm. If the scholarship deadline says 4:30 on February 26th, then you cannot start applying for that scholarship at 5 p.m. on that day. And we really don't want you to miss out on scholarships you might be eligible for just by missing those key dates and times. So it might be really important to keep a checklist of application closing dates. As I've mentioned multiple times tonight, file your FAFSA early. The earlier you do it, the better for you. Many scholarships require it, and it's really handy, to be honest, if you file your FAFSA early and you get it done and it's complete and out of the way for you, rather than trying to do your FAFSA at the same time as, butting up to a lot of deadlines for scholarships. Another tip I will give you is don't wait until the application deadline to submit it. I have seen before where people wait until the last day, and then there's computer, Wi-Fi, other technical issues. You don't want to miss out on a scholarship opportunity by waiting till the very last minute. So if you're looking at the scholarship application deadlines, just make sure that you are not waiting till the very last minute to submit those applications. Many scholarships will ask for a letter of recommendation. If they do, then it's going to be in the application description. So you'll know upfront by looking at the scholarship if they're going to require a letter of recommendation. So if you know that there are 17 scholarships that you're looking at and 5 of them are going to ask for letters of recommendation, then you can, tap the people that you want to be your recommenders and have them completed in plenty of time. Make sure that you choose the person carefully, whoever you want to speak for you. It should be somebody who knows you well and can speak to your accomplishments. So for a scholarship letter of recommendation, it could be slightly or very different from a letter of recommendation for admission, where they might be looking purely on your academic prowess. They might be asking somebody to let them know how you study and those things. For the letters of recommendation, if you're applying for a scholarship based on art criteria, you might want to talk to somebody who knows your artistic ability. So an art teacher or somebody in a club that you belong to. So it's important that you give them plenty of notice that you're going to ask them to provide a letter of recommendation, and maybe it's a couple of weeks before the deadline. It's really nice too if you include a student bio or a resume, just outlining your accomplishments and activities. That person might know you really well, but they may not know everything about you. They may not know all of the wonderful things that you've done. And if they are speaking to your accomplishments, you want them to include everything in their letters of recommendation. The really best letters of recommendation show a student's personality and character. So, if all the recommender says about you is that you have, this wonderful artistic ability and your expression, this might be the perfect type of letter that a scholarship organization is looking for. So really tailor the recommendation to the type of scholarship that you're applying to. Applying for local scholarships is really important because many communities offer these scholarships through clubs, organizations, small businesses. And to be honest, your chances of winning a local scholarship may be a lot greater because they're usually open to a smaller group of students. So for example, they might be for students just from your high school or just from your county or just from the club or organization that you belong to. So check with your school counselor for community and school specific scholarships. Also certainly check on the Delaware Scholarship Compendium, excuse me, for scholarships. Really good idea to ask family members, extended family members, if they know of any scholarships through their employer or through organizations that they belong to. If you have a family member who you think their employer might offer scholarships, ask them to find out for you. If you have a family member who belongs to the Elks Club or something, find out if there's scholarships through those organizations that you can apply for. So local scholarships can be a really good resource. Don't overlook the small scholarships. Okay, everybody wants to apply for the $5,000 or the $10,000 scholarship, and that's great. So should you. You should definitely apply for those scholarships too. But just bear in mind that those are the ones that the most amount of people are going to be applying for. They can be the most competitive. So these scholarships that are $250, $500, these can really add up. If you apply for many scholarships and you get multiple scholarships in that dollar range, it can really add up, particularly if those scholarships are renewable. So if it's a $500 scholarship for 4 years, that can really help. There's no limit to the amount of scholarships that you can apply for. The more, the better. Another tip is don't avoid scholarships that require an essay. So some people, when they're looking through scholarships, think, oh, that's too much work. I don't want to write an essay. I'm already doing so much work right now. If other people are thinking that, then fewer people are going to apply for those scholarships and you would have a better chance of getting that scholarship potentially. So don't overlook anything that has an essay or maybe a little bit more work to them because potentially other people are skipping them and you don't want to do that. So when you're writing a scholarship essay, and very often if a scholarship is looking for an essay, they will be very specific. So they will say, this essay needs to be 1,000 words or less. Make sure it's less than the maximum word limit. Scholarship organizations, when they're reviewing essays, will eliminate students if they've exceeded the word limit. So it's really important to know, stick to the word limit. Proofread your essay to make sure that there are no spelling or grammar mistakes. Have somebody else proofread it for you as well. Answer any questions in the essay prompt. It might seem pretty straightforward, but for example, if there is a scholarship from a historical society and they're asking you to write an essay about a prominent figure in the community, make sure that you're answering the questions that they're asking in that essay prompt and that you're giving them the information they're looking for. It could be a fantastic scholarship essay, but if it has no bearing on the essay prompt, it's not going to be a winning scholarship essay. When you're writing your essay, it's important to find a unique perspective on the essay prompt and make it stand out. Okay, so depending on the scholarship, scholarship organizations could be reading hundreds of scholarship essays. Maybe they're not reading that many, but you want yours to stand out. You want to have a unique perspective that's just going to make them think more about yours and remember your scholarship essay. Be personal in that essay and be passionate about it. That really speaks volumes when people are reviewing scholarship essays. If they can really feel your passion for the subject, that is going to put you ahead of so many other applicants. Apply for a lot of scholarships. So when we're talking about applying for scholarships, we're not talking about 3, 4, or 5. We're really talking about 20, 30 or more. Okay, treat it like a school assignment. This is an investment in your future. If you spend 2 hours applying for multiple scholarships and you receive one $500 scholarship, then basically you're worth $500 for that 2 hours of your life, which is more than you're going to earn working for 2 hours in your life. And again, if it's a renewable scholarship, that is money that you have for multiple years. The more scholarships you apply for, the better your chance of receiving one. Put aside regular times to look for scholarship. You know, do it once a week, an hour each day, whatever works best for you. And as I mentioned earlier, coming up to the summer before your senior year is when you're really going to hone in on which scholarships you're going to apply for. Stay as organized as possible, particularly if you're applying for 20 or 30 scholarships. You want to make a calendar, make a checklist, know the scholarship application deadlines, their opening, their closing. And what might be really helpful too is just make notes on whether a scholarship requires an essay or whether it requires a letter of recommendation so that you're not duplicating. You could use potentially the same letters of recommendation for multiple scholarships. So if you're really organized, you can use that time to really capture all of the information that you need for those scholarships. And again, don't apply at the last minute. Make sure that you're applying well before deadlines. That goes for all scholarships, state scholarships, institutional scholarships from your college, and private scholarships. Be mindful of the application deadlines and make sure that you're not missing anything. It is important to note when we're talking about scholarships to be very wary of any potential scholarship scams. If a scholarship looks for personal information, that's a real red flag. A legitimate scholarship will never ask for something like your social security number or any really personal information. If you see that, that would be a red flag that it's not a legitimate scholarship. If a scholarship is asking for a fee, if they're saying, you know, pay $40 and just submit this application, that is also not something that would be a legitimate scholarship. Any scholarship that is guaranteeing that you'll win or guaranteeing that you'll win if you go through their service is probably also not a good idea. Generally, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. One other thing that should be on your radar too, when you're looking for a scholarship application, it should have the sponsor's contact information in the application. Like, who are you sending it to? What is the club, the organization, the donor? If you can't find any of that information in the scholarship application, that could be a little bit of a red flag. Generally, scholarship applications are very clear in the information that you are submitting and where you're submitting it to. So unless you see any of these things that are really obvious red flags, you're fine just by spending some time really reviewing the application for scholarships. So I just want to leave you tonight with some tips throughout the financial aid and scholarship search process for you. And really an important thing to note is if you're completing your FAFSA or any scholarship application, use an email address that you're going to check regularly. Okay, scholarship organizations might be emailing you with updates, or potentially they might need additional information from you. Maybe something didn't come through clearly in your email and they just wanted to reach out to you. Certainly with the FAFSA, you're going to get a student aid report emailed to you. You're going to want to check that. Don't use your school's email address. Usually about a year, if not a little bit less, after you graduate from high school, your school email address is going to be deactivated. If a scholarship organization has that school address as your only email address and they want to reach out to you in subsequent years, you might be missing out on really important information from them. So use an email address that's checked regularly. If you don't have an email address, you can create one purely for FAFSA scholarship and college application. So use them only for those things, but make sure that you're checking them regularly. Parents, if a parent is creating an account for the student, make sure that the student also has access to it and that they are also checking it regularly. Another tip is to apply for lots of scholarships in many different categories. And please don't just get discouraged if you don't win them all. The more that you apply to, the better your chances of receiving some financial aid. If you're only applying to 1 or 2 scholarships and you don't get them, you don't have a lot of other options after that. Complete the FAFSA as early as possible. Certainly mention that multiple times because that's really important. Schools have priority funding deadlines, as do private scholarships, the state, and lots of other entities. If they're looking at the FAFSA, they may want it completed by a certain date. So as early as possible after October 1st every year, please file your FAFSA. Again, with college essays, complete them early scholarship essays, complete them early and have them reviewed. So not just by you, by multiple people who are looking at them for content as well as grammar and things like that. Don't pay for service to complete the FAFSA for you. It's a free application for federal student aid, but there are entities out there and they are legitimate. They could be legitimate entities that may help you to file your FAFSA, but the FAFSA has been simplified so much in the last couple of years. It's really something that you can perfectly manage yourself. And if you need assistance filing your FAFSA, you can do that through our partner, through Stand By Me. They have a lot of different resources available and a lot of different virtual presentations that they have available right now. Again, you can see where those are being held or when they're being held by going to DelawareStudentSuccess.org and events. They have FAFSA walkthrough presentations. They're now offering FAFSA one-on-one appointments for seniors who are completing the FAFSA at this point and they need some one-on-one help. They have entire presentations just on scholarships and how to apply for scholarships. So they're a really good resource too. I know this has been a lot of information tonight. I hope it was relevant to you. Certainly, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out. That is my work email address through the higher education office, and the website where you can get all of this information, including events and access to the Delaware Scholarship Compendium, is the DelawareStudentSuccess.org website. So I really appreciate your time tonight. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this point.
We have one question.
Yeah.
If you're going to use the SEED scholarship, should you still be applying for these other scholarships? If awarded, can you hold that scholarship for the third year to help pay after the SEED?
That's a great question. So if you know you're going to go to school and get the SEED, should you also apply for other scholarships? And the answer is yes. So SEED will cover tuition. So it covers the cost of tuition, but you would also have to buy your books. You would have fees. And each school has a cost of attendance that includes those expenses. So you can have the SEED scholarship and additional scholarships to help cover those other things. So yes, absolutely, you would want to apply for multiple scholarships. It's also important to apply for multiple scholarships in case your plans change. So you may be fully intending on going to the University of Delaware Associate of Arts program or to Delaware Technical Community College for SEED, but then you might decide to go somewhere else and you don't want to limit yourself and not have applied for other scholarships. Some scholarship organizations will allow you to hold your scholarships until multiple years, maybe until your third year, or if you're going from an Associate of Arts program into a bachelor's program, that would be up to the individual donors. Private scholarships are certainly much more able to do that because they might have the flexibility to do that. State scholarships, they can't be held. And federal aid most likely also can't be held. You can apply each year and be eligible for them each year, but they won't be able to be held. So private scholarships would certainly be able to do that easier. But I would encourage you to apply for scholarships and apply for Del Tech and UD Associate of Arts program for the SEED scholarship. Keep your options open. Potentially use SEED in addition to those other scholarships as well for other expenses. So that's a really good question. Thank you.
Julie, I have two questions that I thought, or not questions, but things that you might want to mention. Do you want to just give a heads up about test optional and merit scholarships, just to have people ask that question at schools in case they're impacted by that?
Yes, Karen, so that's a really good point. So some schools are now going admission test optional so that you can apply to the school but not submit your SAT scores, for example. So if that is the case, that's wonderful for admissions. You would want to make sure that by not submitting SAT scores, you are also not making yourself ineligible for any merit scholarships at the school. So if they do happen to have merit scholarships, are they also looking at your SATs? And if that's the case, can you submit your SAT scores, for example, for consideration for a scholarship, but not for admission? Those are questions that you would be asking an admission office when you're applying to a school that's test optional. So that you want to make sure that you're not going to lose eligibility for any scholarships. For the Memorial Scholarships from the state of Delaware, as you saw earlier, there is an SAT requirement and a GPA requirement. So you would be submitting those for consideration for those scholarships. But again, as Karen mentioned, when more schools are going to test optional for admissions purposes, that's a really good question to ask them. Are you also going to be looked at for merit-based scholarships without having an SAT?
And the other tip I thought of as you were talking, if a scholarship says that they have a preferred major, say, for example, political science is preferred, not required, but preferred. If you don't have that major or you're not planning to major in that, but you meet the other qualifications, you should still go ahead and apply for that scholarship, because if no one who has a political science major applies for that scholarship, then they will move on to the other candidates and consider you. So certainly if it's a scholarship that requires a certain major, then you need to meet that admission, that criteria. But if it's just preferred and everything else, you meet those requirements, go ahead and apply.
Yes, yeah, that is a really good point. Because as you said, if there is a year that somebody who's not in that specific major is applying, then we will be looking at all other eligible candidates too. So yes, preferred. Certainly you would want to still apply for those scholarships. Good point.
Rachel or Tilly, do you want to address that one last question?
Yeah, so we just got a question from Kiana, who asked, what can I do with the remaining scholarship money after all my tuition and fees are paid for?
So if you are fortunate enough to receive enough scholarships to cover tuition and fees, that is wonderful. You can use the additional scholarship money that you have to pay for these other indirect expenses. So that's allowable through schools because each school has a budget to include those costs. So if your tuition and fees are paid, most likely you would be able to use that money to cover your books, to cover a meal plan. Even if you're a commuter and you choose to purchase a commuter meal plan, you could use them for that. You could use them for any of the other indirect expenses that are allowed by colleges. You would just want to make sure with the donors of those scholarships that you're allowed to use them for those things. Very often they are, as long as it is within what they call the cost of attendance of the institution. You can take your financial aid all the way up to that full cost of attendance. So that's great if your tuition and fees are paid by scholarships and you have more money left over. Use them for books and these other indirect expenses. Absolutely.
I think we've addressed all of the questions. Certainly, if anyone has additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Julie at the email address on the screen, dheo@doe.k12.de.us. So thank you, Julie, for sharing some really great information. I hope everyone found it helpful. And thank you, everyone, for your time tonight. Again, this is the same email address for me as well if you have questions on anything else. So thank you, everybody, for attending. Thanks, Tilly and Rachel, for handling the questions, and for Kelly Sheritz and Chris Kelly, who are also on the call helping us to manage the webinar. So thank you, everyone. And please join us for future webinars later this week and through probably mid-December. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.